The door slammed open, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing through the grand hallway. Ellie, clutching a crumpled drawing in her small hands, ran toward the dining room where Gareth sat, a furrowed brow and phone in hand. "Dad, I'm not choosing anyone else," she shouted, her voice trembling with frustration. Gareth's head snapped up, his lips thinning as he saw his daughter's tear-streaked face. She was holding onto that drawing with such intensity, it looked as though she might tear it in her hands. "Ellie, this is for your own good," he said, his voice firm, but with a trace of uncertainty. "The nannies? I don't want them. I want Nora." Ellie cut him off, her voice rising in defiance. Gareth's jaw clenched. "Ellie," he said again, trying to soften his tone, "Nora isn't qualified to look after you. She's a housekeeper. You need someone who knows what they're doing, someone who can teach you, guide you." Ellie's eyes locked onto his, and in that moment, Gareth felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't about her acting out or throwing a tantrum. Ellie was calm, but resolute. She was, in her own way, challenging him to see something he refused to admit. "Dad," Ellie whispered, her voice cracking, "Nora takes care of me. She always has. She's here when I'm scared, when I'm sick. She listens to me when no one else does. I don't need someone else to tell me what to do. I need Nora." Gareth's throat tightened. He'd never thought of it like that. He had always been focused on what looked right, what made sense in the polished world he moved through. But Ellie's words cut deeper than anything he could have expected. He opened his mouth to argue, but then he saw it. The drawing. Ellie held it up in front of him, eyes shining with determination. It was a picture of her and Nora together. They were smiling, the sun shining brightly above them. The love in that simple picture was so raw, so real, that for a moment Gareth couldn't bring himself to say anything. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Ellie, this isn't how the world works," he said, his voice a little softer now, though frustration still lingered. "People like Nora, people like us, there are lines. She can't just step into that role. It's not right." Ellie's face hardened. "It's right for me," she said quietly, the finality in her tone making it clear that there was no more room for debate. Just as the silence hung between them, there was a knock at the door. Gareth turned and saw the 5 professional nannies standing in the doorway, their eyes sharp with expectation. "Let's not keep them waiting," Gareth said, more to himself than to anyone else. His heart was torn between Ellie's emotional plea and the expectations of the world he had built. He needed this decision to make sense in his world. But Ellie didn't move. She stood rooted in place, her tiny fists clenched around the picture she had drawn. "Ellie, please," Gareth said, his voice now pleading. "They're the ones who can give you what you need. They're professionals." Ellie's gaze never wavered from her father's. "No, Dad," she said so softly it was almost a whisper. "I want Nora." The words cut through Gareth like a knife. This was no longer about a simple nanny decision. This was about trust, love, and the very foundation of what made his family. Quick question, do you agree with Ellie's choice? Do you think emotional connections should override professional titles? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with more stories like this. Gareth took a slow, deep breath and turned toward the candidates. "I think we've heard enough for today," he said firmly, forcing a professional tone. "Ellie, go upstairs. I'll handle this." Ellie didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned and walked out of the room without looking back. Gareth's heart sank as he watched her retreating figure, the sound of her footsteps soft but resolute in his mind. "Sir, perhaps we should discuss this matter privately," one of the nannies said, her voice overly polite, though there was a sharpness underneath that made it clear she didn't approve of Ellie's choice. "I'll take care of it," Gareth said, his voice low. Thank you all for coming." As the nannies filed out of the room, Gareth sat down heavily in his chair. His hands shook as he picked up the glass of water on his desk, trying to steady his nerves. It wasn't just about Ellie's choice. It was about what this would mean for him, for his reputation. He'd built this life with so much precision, so much planning. Everything in his world had a place, a name, a title. But now his daughter was telling him that love, true care, wasn't something that could be measured by what people did for a living or what they were qualified for. It was about who was there when no one else was. Gareth couldn't bring himself to admit it, but he was shaken. He had always thought he knew how to do this. Parenting, life. But now, with Ellie's simple yet devastating choice, he was starting to question everything. Let me know if you're enjoying the story so far. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're loving the direction it's going. Your support helps a lot. The house was eerily quiet after Ellie left the room. Gareth sat alone, staring at the door through which his daughter had just exited. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest and the weight of his own thoughts pressed down on him. What was he supposed to do now? He had always prided himself on his ability to make decisions quickly and confidently, but now, faced with this decision about his daughter, he was frozen. His mind ran in circles, bouncing from the image of Ellie's drawing to the stern faces of the professional nannies. He could feel the tension building in his chest. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours before he finally stood up and walked to the window. He gazed out at the sprawling estate, the vastness of it all making him feel small and insignificant. The mansion, the grounds, the perfect life he had built. None of it seemed to matter anymore. What did any of it mean if he couldn't even give his daughter what she needed? The thought hit him like a ton of bricks. What if I'm failing her? He clenched his fists, the reality sinking in. For all his wealth, his success, and the respect he had earned, he hadn't been able to give Ellie the one thing that mattered most, a caregiver who truly understood her. He didn't have to look very far to see who that person was. It was right in front of him. Nora. Gareth's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. He straightened up quickly, wiping his hands on his pants, and called out, "Come in." It was Jessica, his personal assistant. She stepped in hesitantly, her eyes kind but full of concern. "Sir, are you all right?" "I'm fine," Gareth said sharply, but he knew he was far from it. "What's going on?" "I just wanted to check in on you," Jessica said softly, glancing at the empty chair across from him. "I can see this is weighing heavily on you." Gareth rubbed his temples. "I don't know what to do. Ellie's made her choice, but it's Nora. She's not qualified, Jessica. I mean, really qualified. Can she even handle it?" Jessica crossed the room and sat down next to him, her tone gentle. "Gareth, sometimes the best qualifications aren't the ones you can put on paper. You've known Nora for years. She's been here for Ellie since the beginning, hasn't she?" Gareth looked away, staring at the floor. "She's a housekeeper, Jessica, not a nanny." "I know," Jessica replied, "but that doesn't mean she doesn't know how to care for Ellie. Sometimes being there is enough. You said it yourself. She listens to Ellie. She's there when Ellie's scared. That's more than any resume can say." Gareth sat back in his chair, his mind racing. Everything Jessica said rang true, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. He didn't want to admit it, but deep down, he was afraid. Afraid that making Nora Ellie's nanny would cause problems, that it would blur lines he had worked so hard to keep clear. But the truth was, those lines had already been blurred. Ellie's choice was evidence of that. And if he was being honest, it was starting to make more sense than anything he had planned. "I don't want to make the wrong decision, Jessica," Gareth said quietly, his voice raw. "I don't want to fail her." "You're not failing her, Gareth," Jessica said firmly. "You're just seeing things in a new light. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that force us to change the way we've always thought. The words stung, but in a way they felt like a relief. He'd been so focused on doing things the right way, on following the rules. He hadn't stopped to think if those rules were even the right ones for his family. "Thanks, Jessica," Gareth muttered, rubbing his face. "I think I know what I need to do." Ellie sat alone in her room, her legs crossed on the floor, staring at the drawing she had made. The picture of her and Nora seemed to glow in the dim light of her room. The sun in the drawing bright and warm, a stark contrast to the cold feeling she had in her chest. She heard footsteps outside the door, soft but purposeful. She knew it was her father. "Ellie?" Gareth's voice was tentative, unsure. "Can I come in?" Ellie didn't respond immediately. She didn't want to talk about this anymore, but she couldn't ignore the sadness in his voice. Slowly she nodded, even though her heart still felt heavy. The door creaked open and Gareth stepped inside. He hesitated at the doorway for a moment, looking at his daughter, then at the drawing in her hands. "Ellie, I've been thinking," Gareth began, his voice still unsure. "You were right about Nora. She's been there for you, more than anyone else, and maybe I've been too focused on the wrong things." Ellie looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. This wasn't the response she'd expected. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. "I've been worried about what other people would think, about what's proper, but when I think about it, all that matters is who's there for you when it counts. And I can see that Nora has been there for you, through everything, and, well, maybe that's enough." Ellie's breath caught in her throat. Could it be? Was he really saying what she thought he was saying? "So," she began, a little hesitant, "does this mean—" Gareth stepped closer, his eyes filled with uncertainty, but also something else, an understanding that had been missing before. "Ellie, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to try to do better. If you want Nora, if she's the one who makes you feel safe, then I'll make it happen." Ellie's face lit up. She leapt up from the floor, rushing toward her father. "You're really going to do it?" Gareth chuckled softly, pulling her into a tight hug. "I am. It's what you need. And maybe it's what I need, too." Quick question. How do you feel about Gareth's decision? Do you think he made the right choice? Let us know in the comments. And remember, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep following Ellie's journey and see how her story unfolds. The warmth of her father's embrace lingered, but Ellie knew this was just the beginning. The relief she felt was still fresh, but there was something else too. She was holding her breath, waiting for the next part of this journey to unfold. Her father pulled back, his hands still resting on her shoulders. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in a long time, there was a softness in his gaze that made Ellie feel like maybe, just maybe, things could be different. "Dad, you don't have to be perfect," Ellie said quietly, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions inside her. "You just have to be here, like Nora is." Gareth's face softened. He sighed, a deep, drawn-out sound before speaking again. "I know, but it's not easy, Ellie. The world doesn't just let go of its expectations. It's hard to look beyond titles and qualifications. Sometimes it feels like I'm fighting against everything I've worked for." Ellie nodded, understanding more than he knew. "I know, but it's worth it." The silence between them stretched out, comfortable but heavy. Then Gareth spoke again, his voice low but firm. "I'll talk to Nora tomorrow. I'll make sure she knows we're doing this the right way. No more doubts." Ellie smiled, feeling the weight on her chest ease just a little bit more. "Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd understand." The next morning, Gareth found himself pacing in his office, preparing for what would be a difficult conversation. He had always been used to making decisions with precision and authority, but this wasn't a business deal. This was about his family, about Ellie, about what truly mattered. The door opened softly and Nora stepped inside, her usual calm demeanor now marked with a hint of uncertainty. Gareth didn't look up right away, but he could feel her presence in the room, as steady and reliable as always. He let the silence linger before he finally spoke. "Nora," he began, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "I need to talk to you about Ellie." Nora didn't respond at first, but her posture shifted, as though she could feel the gravity of the conversation that was about to unfold. Gareth turned to face her, and for the first time, he saw her not as the housekeeper, but as someone far more important to his daughter. "I've been thinking," Gareth continued, his hands clenched at his sides. "Ellie is clear about what she wants, and I think it's time we all stop pretending that her choice isn't the right one." Nora's eyes widened, but she said nothing, waiting for him to continue. The tension in the room grew thick, like a quiet storm about to break. "I'm offering you the position," Gareth said finally, his words firm but hesitant. "I know you're not qualified by the world's standards, but you've been the one who's been there for Ellie from the start, and that counts for more than anything else." Nora stood still for a moment, her hands trembling ever so slightly. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. It wasn't until she had taken a few deep breaths that she finally found her voice. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. This is what Ellie needs, but I don't want to disappoint her. I don't want to fail her." "You won't fail her," Gareth said firmly. "She trusts you more than anyone else. I see that now." Nora's face softened, a mix of relief and sadness crossing her features. She stepped closer to him, her eyes locked on his. "If you truly believe that, I'll do it. I'll be Ellie's nanny, but not because of titles or status. I'll do it because I love her and I want to be there for her." Gareth nodded, his chest heavy with a strange sense of pride. "That's all that matters." Later that day, as Nora began settling into her new role, the dynamic in the house shifted. There was a sense of warmth in the air that hadn't been there before. Gareth watched from his office window, his mind still racing with the realization of what he had just done. It felt like a weight had been lifted, but it also felt like the beginning of something new, something that would take time to fully understand. In the kitchen, Ellie and Nora were laughing over breakfast. The sound of their voices echoed through the house, and for the first time in years, Gareth felt a quiet peace. He had done the right thing. Or at least he hoped he had. But as the days passed, the real work began. The other staff members started to notice the change. Some of them were supportive, even if they hadn't quite understood why Gareth had made the decision. Others were less convinced, their skepticism clear in the way they spoke about Nora's new role. There was tension, subtle but undeniable, in the way the house staff interacted with each other. It wasn't easy for Nora to step into a position of authority, especially in a household that had always viewed her as part of the support staff. Quick question: how do you think Nora will handle her new responsibilities? Do you think it will be smooth sailing, or will there be challenges ahead? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe for more of this story as it unfolds. But Nora didn't back down. Every day she showed up for Ellie, proving over and over again that her love for the child was more than enough to make her a capable nanny. She guided Ellie with patience and understanding, always there when Ellie needed her most. And while the other staff members watched cautiously, Nora continued to prove that her presence was invaluable. Ellie, for her part, was happier than ever. She had her father's approval, and more importantly, she had Nora, the one person who had always been there when the world seemed too big and too scary. The bond between them grew stronger every day, their connection undeniable. Gareth watched all of this from the sidelines, still processing everything that had happened. He had made a choice, and while it was one that defied the expectations of the world around him, it was one that felt right. Ellie had chosen Nora, and now he could see why. It wasn't about titles, it wasn't about status or qualifications. It was about the love and the care that could never be measured in resumes or interviews. It was about the people who stayed, who showed up, and who made the choice to be there when it mattered most. Gareth wasn't perfect. He had made mistakes. But for once, he felt like he was finally getting something right. Ellie was happy. Nora was finally being seen for the incredible person she was. And in a strange way, the house felt like a home again. What do you think of Gareth's journey and Nora's role in Ellie's life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated on future episodes of this emotional story. Here's the fourth batch of the story, continuing the emotional journey as Gareth, Nora, and Ellie navigate the changes in their lives. The days blended together, but the house never quite felt the same again. There was a subtle shift in the air, an unspoken tension that had settled between the staff, some supportive of Nora, while others still didn't understand why Gareth had given her such an important role. As for Nora, she had her hands full. She tried to remain calm, her usual reserved demeanor keeping her grounded, but the pressure was mounting. She was suddenly the one in charge of Ellie's day-to-day care, no longer just a housekeeper, but now a full-time nanny, a role she had never anticipated, but accepted because of her love for Ellie. She couldn't ignore the whispers from the staff, the sideways glances and the quiet murmurs whenever she passed by. But she kept her head high, focusing only on Ellie, who had never been more content. Every morning, Ellie woke up with a smile, eager to start the day with Nora. They spent their mornings in the garden, Ellie coloring in her notebook while Nora trimmed the hedges, her voice a soft melody in the background as she asked Ellie about her dreams or what she wanted to do that day. It was simple, it was real, and it was everything Ellie needed, but the weight of what had transpired lingered with Gareth. While he had made his decision, there were moments when he questioned whether he'd done the right thing. Had he given up too easily on the expectations of society? Had he put his daughter's happiness above his own desire to maintain a perfect image? Late one night, as Gareth sat alone in his study, looking out at the expansive estate, he found himself thinking about his father, the man who had built this empire, who had taught him to value success and status above all else. The man who had never shown much affection, but whose approval Gareth had always craved. Gareth clenched his jaw. Would my father have understood this? He wondered. Just then, the phone buzzed on his desk, snapping him out of his reverie. It was a message from Jessica. Sir, there's a meeting tomorrow with the board. You'll need to make a decision regarding your family situation before we move forward with any public announcements. Gareth's stomach sank. The board, the people who had helped him get to the top, the people who cared about appearances and credentials, the people who would never understand his choice to prioritize love and loyalty over status. He rubbed his eyes, then set the phone down. Tomorrow he'd have to face them all, answer their questions, and figure out how to explain his decision. But for tonight, he allowed himself a moment of quiet, staring out at the night sky, wondering if he could ever shake the feeling that he was doing something wrong. The next morning, Nora and Ellie were already in the garden when Gareth walked downstairs. The warmth of the sunlight fell across the garden, casting long shadows on the ground. Ellie was sitting on a bench, her notebook in her lap, a smile spreading across her face as Nora bent down to tie her shoelaces. Gareth paused at the door, watching them from the threshold. The peace between them was palpable. It was simple. It was real. It was the family he had always wanted but never quite understood how to create. His heart swelled with pride, but also with a gnawing uncertainty. His mind flicked back to the meeting with the board. He had to make a decision, one that would affect everything. But as he watched Nora tuck a lock of hair behind Ellie's ear, he couldn't help but think that maybe the hardest decisions were the ones that forced you to face who you really were. The board meeting was an ordeal. Gareth stood at the head of the table, surrounded by a group of executives who eyed him expectantly. The tension in the room was palpable as the discussion moved to the company's next steps, but then it turned toward a more personal topic. One of the board members, Gerald, a sharp, imposing man with a cold demeanor, spoke up. "Gareth, we've noticed some changes recently. You've made headlines for stepping away from some public events and, well, the decisions regarding your family. It's raising some concerns." Gareth felt his stomach tighten. "What concerns?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with a hint of defensiveness. "The media is buzzing," Gerald said. "People are questioning your ability to manage both your personal and professional life. They want to know why you've appointed someone like Nora in such a prominent role. She doesn't have the experience for it. She's not in your circle of—" Gareth cut him off, his voice harder now. "She's what my daughter needs, and I'm not going to apologize for that." The room fell silent. All eyes were on Gareth. He could feel the weight of their disapproval, their skepticism. But for the first time, he didn't care. He had made his decision. His family came first. "Perhaps we need to reevaluate the public image," Jessica interjected from the back of the room, her voice calm but assertive. "It's about shifting perspective, not just following expectations." Gareth nodded. "Exactly. I'm doing what's best for my family, and that's all that matters." Quick question. Do you think Gareth made the right choice by standing up for his family, even if it means risking his professional reputation? Let us know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this emotional journey, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to keep up with the next chapters. The meeting dragged on for what felt like hours, but in the end, Gareth stood his ground. The board might not have agreed with him, but they had no choice but to accept his decision. As he left the meeting, he felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. It wasn't easy, but he knew it was the right choice. That night, when he returned home, he found Nora and Ellie in the living room, reading together. The sight of them, so comfortable, so content, was all the reassurance he needed. He had made the right decision. As Gareth sat down with them, he finally felt at peace. The world outside might have its rules, but inside his home, he was starting to understand what truly mattered. Love, trust, family. Final thought. What do you think will happen next in Gareth's journey? Will his family life continue to improve, or will the pressure from the outside world cause more tension? Let us know your predictions in the comments, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. The following week, the atmosphere in the house felt different, though not entirely comfortable. Gareth had stood his ground at the board meeting, but his confidence wavered as the reality of the decision settled in. He hadn't realized just how much the outside world's opinion mattered to him until now. He had built his empire based on meeting expectations, on playing by the rules. But this, what he had done for Ellie, what he had done for Nora, was a shift he hadn't anticipated. The board still wasn't entirely happy with his decision, but they had reluctantly agreed to let things play out, giving him some time to prove that his personal choices wouldn't affect the company's performance. For now, the matter was settled. But for how long? At dinner that evening, the house felt quieter than usual. Gareth sat at the head of the table, Nora at one end, with Ellie in the middle, her plate mostly untouched as she nervously poked at her food. "Nora," Ellie said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I'm glad you're here. I think Dad's finally starting to get it." Gareth looked up from his plate, meeting Ellie's gaze. Her smile was a bright contrast to the tension he felt. He forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Maybe I am," he muttered, pushing his food around his plate. The silence between them was thick, but Ellie didn't seem to notice. She was too busy watching Nora carefully. Nora, who had been looking down at her own plate, looked up, meeting Gareth's eyes with an understanding that made him uneasy. He had no idea what he'd been thinking, giving her this responsibility. But there was something about the way she cared for Ellie, something raw and honest, that was impossible to ignore. "Ellie's been great," Nora said softly, a small smile curling on her lips. "She's been adjusting well." Ellie's face lit up with pride. "I'm getting better at drawing, too. Maybe one day I'll teach you how to draw." The mention of drawing made Gareth's heart ache. It was something so simple, something he had overlooked for so long, but now it felt like the key to the bond between Ellie and Nora. He couldn't remember the last time he had truly been there for Ellie in a way that mattered. "I'm sure you'll teach me better than anyone," Nora said, her tone light and encouraging. "You've got talent, kiddo." The conversation shifted to Ellie's drawings, and Gareth's mind wandered. He watched them, Ellie and Nora, laughing together, as if there were no lingering doubts in the world. But for him, the questions remained. Had he made the right choice? What would this mean for his family, for his future? The next few days passed in a blur, the routine of Ellie's days now shaped entirely by Nora. They spent their mornings in the garden, afternoons playing games or working on art projects, and evenings with dinner at the table, the three of them sharing stories and laughter. Gareth, though often quiet, began to observe more closely. There was something undeniably special about what Nora and Ellie shared. Ellie, who had always been shy and withdrawn, was opening up in ways Gareth hadn't seen before. It wasn't just that she was happy, she was thriving. She was beginning to trust, to learn, to feel safe, and all of it was thanks to Nora. But despite the growing comfort in the house, there was an undeniable sense of unease that hung in the background. It wasn't the way Ellie had been flourishing under Nora's care, or even the quiet tension with the board members. It was something else, something deeper that Gareth couldn't shake. Late one night, long after the house had settled into silence, Gareth found himself standing by the window in his study again. Outside, the lights of the estate stretched far into the distance, the world feeling distant and removed from what was happening inside. His mind kept going back to one question, over and over again. Why had it taken so long for me to see this? He didn't know the answer, but he couldn't deny that the life he'd been building, the walls he'd put up, were crumbling in front of him. And maybe that was okay. He turned away from the window and walked down the hall, stopping outside Ellie's bedroom door. He could hear her soft breathing on the other side, a reminder that the choices he made now would shape her future. Gareth knocked gently on the door and waited. A moment later, Ellie's voice came from inside. "Come in, Dad." He opened the door slowly, stepping inside to see Ellie sitting up in bed, her favorite stuffed animal clutched in her arms. "I just wanted to check on you," he said quietly, standing at the edge of her bed. "How's everything?" Ellie looked up, her eyes bright. "Everything's good. Nora's awesome. She even said I could draw on the wall." Gareth smiled, the warmth in his chest growing. "That sounds like a fun project," he said, trying to hide the knot in his stomach. He had a lot to make up for, but for the first time in a long time, he knew he was on the right path. "Dad?" Ellie asked suddenly, her voice quieter now. "Are you okay?" Gareth froze, his heart skipping a beat. "I'm fine, Ellie. Why do you ask?" "You look like you're thinking too hard," she said, her eyes narrowed with the perceptiveness that only a child seemed to possess. "Is everything really okay with you and Nora?" He hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to burden Ellie with his doubts. But she already knew. She always knew. I think, he started, taking a deep breath, I'm still figuring it out, but I think everything will be okay. Ellie smiled and patted the space beside her. You don't have to figure everything out, Dad. You've got me and Nora, and we're all fine. Gareth sat beside her, the weight on his shoulders easing just a little. Ellie was right. He didn't have to have all the answers. Maybe the only thing that truly mattered was being present, being there for her when it counted. Quick question. Do you think Gareth is finally starting to let go of his need for perfection? Let us know in the comments. If you're loving this story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated for the next part of the journey. The days that followed were quieter, and for once, Gareth felt like he had time to breathe. The noise of the world outside didn't seem as overwhelming. The mansion, which had once felt so imposing and cold, began to feel like a home again. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for the first time in a long time, Gareth felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Let me know what you think. The next part will dive deeper into the changes Gareth is facing and the path he's starting to carve for himself and his family. Stay tuned. The following week, the atmosphere in the house felt different, though not entirely comfortable. Gareth had stood his ground at the board meeting, but his confidence wavered as the reality of the decision settled in. He hadn't realized just how much the outside world's opinion mattered to him until now. He had built his empire based on meeting expectations, on playing by the rules. But this, what he had done for Ellie, what he had done for Nora, was a shift he hadn't anticipated. The board still wasn't entirely happy with his decision, but they had reluctantly agreed to let things play out, giving him some time to prove that his personal choices wouldn't affect the company's performance. For now, the matter was settled. But for how long? At dinner that evening, the house felt quieter than usual. Gareth sat at the head of the table, Nora at one end, with Ellie in the middle, her plate mostly untouched as she nervously poked at her food. Nora, Ellie said suddenly, breaking the silence, I'm glad you're here. I think Dad's finally starting to get it. Gareth looked up from his plate, meeting Ellie's gaze. Her smile was a bright contrast to the tension he felt. He forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Maybe I am, he muttered, pushing his food around his plate. The silence between them was thick, but Ellie didn't seem to notice. She was too busy watching Nora carefully. Nora, who had been looking down at her own plate, looked up, meeting Gareth's eyes with an understanding that made him uneasy. He had no idea what he'd been thinking, giving her this responsibility, but there was something about the way she cared for Ellie, something raw and honest, that was impossible to ignore. Ellie's been great, Nora said softly, a small smile curling on her lips. She's been adjusting well. Ellie's face lit up with pride. I'm getting better at drawing too. Maybe one day I'll teach you how to draw. The mention of drawing made Gareth's heart ache. It was something so simple, something he had overlooked for so long, but now it felt like the key to the bond between Ellie and Nora. He couldn't remember the last time he had truly been there for Ellie in a way that mattered. I'm sure you'll teach me better than anyone, Nora said, her tone light and encouraging. You've got talent, kiddo. The conversation shifted to Ellie's drawings, and Gareth's mind wandered. He watched them, Ellie and Nora, laughing together, as if there were no lingering doubts in the world. But for him, the questions remained. Had he made the right choice? What would this mean for his family, for his future? The next few days passed in a blur, the routine of Ellie's days now shaped entirely by Nora. They spent their mornings in the garden, afternoons playing games or working on art projects, and evenings with dinner at the table, the three of them sharing stories and laughter. Gareth, though often quiet, began to observe more closely. There was something undeniably special about what Nora and Ellie shared. Ellie, who had always been shy and withdrawn, was opening up in ways Gareth hadn't seen before. It wasn't just that she was happy, she was thriving. She was beginning to trust, to learn, to feel safe. And all of it was thanks to Nora. But despite the growing comfort in the house, there was an undeniable sense of unease that hung in the background. It wasn't the way Ellie had been flourishing under Nora's care, or even the quiet tension with the board members. It was something else, something deeper that Gareth couldn't shake. Late one night, long after the house had settled into silence, Gareth found himself standing by the window in his study again. Outside, the lights of the estate stretched far into the distance, the world feeling distant and removed from what was happening inside. His mind kept going back to one question, over and over again. Why had it taken so long for me to see this? He didn't know the answer, but he couldn't deny that the life he'd been building, the walls he'd put up, were crumbling in front of him. And maybe that was okay. He turned away from the window and walked down the hall, stopping outside Ellie's bedroom door. He could hear her soft breathing on the other side, a reminder that the choices he made now would shape her future. Gareth knocked gently on the door and waited. A moment later, Ellie's voice came from inside. "Come in, Dad." He opened the door slowly, stepping inside to see Ellie sitting up in bed, her favorite stuffed animal clutched in her arms. "I just wanted to check on you," he said quietly, standing at the edge of her bed. "How's everything?" Ellie looked up, her eyes bright. "Everything's good. Nora's awesome. She even said I could draw on the wall." Gareth smiled, the warmth in his chest growing. "That sounds like a fun project," he said, trying to hide the knot in his stomach. He had a lot to make up for, but for the first time in a long time, he knew he was on the right path. "Dad?" Ellie asked suddenly, her voice quieter now. "Are you okay?" Gareth froze, his heart skipping a beat. "I'm fine, Ellie. Why do you ask?" "You look like you're thinking too hard," she said. Her eyes narrowed with the perceptiveness that only a child seemed to possess. "Is everything really okay with you and Nora?" He hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to burden Ellie with his doubts, but she already knew. She always knew. "I think," he started, taking a deep breath, "I'm still figuring it out, but I think everything will be okay." Ellie smiled and patted the space beside her. "You don't have to figure everything out, Dad. You've got me and Nora, and we're all fine." Gareth sat beside her, the weight on his shoulders easing just a little. Ellie was right. He didn't have to have all the answers. Maybe the only thing that truly mattered was being present, being there for her when it counted. Quick question. Do you think Gareth is finally starting to let go of his need for perfection? Let us know in the comments. If you're loving this story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated for the next part of the journey. The days that followed were quieter, and for once, Gareth felt like he had time to breathe. The noise of the world outside didn't seem as overwhelming. The mansion, which had once felt so imposing and cold, began to feel like a home again. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for the first time in a long time, Gareth felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Let me know what you think. The next part will dive deeper into the changes Gareth is facing and the path he's starting to carve for himself and his family. Stay tuned. The following morning, Gareth awoke to the soft sound of Ellie's laughter drifting from the garden. He stretched, feeling the stiffness of yesterday's board meeting still lingering in his shoulders. Rising from his bed, he opened the window, inhaling the crisp morning air. The sun glinted off the estate's manicured hedges, but his eyes were drawn to the smaller figure of Ellie, skipping alongside Nora, her hair bouncing in the light breeze. Gareth stood there for a moment, the image settling deep in his chest. He'd never noticed before how small victories, Ellie's laughter, the ease of a simple morning, could feel so monumental. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of fresh bread and fruit, the warm aroma drifting through the hallways. Nora was bustling about, preparing breakfast, but her movements were calm, measured. She glanced up when Gareth entered, giving him a soft nod that carried unspoken understanding. "Morning," he said quietly. "Good morning, sir," Nora replied, her tone neutral, professional, but tinged with warmth. "Ellie's excited today. She wants to show you her new drawing." Gareth nodded, trying to suppress the flutter of nerves in his chest. He followed them into the garden, where Ellie held up a fresh sheet of paper, her eyes wide with pride. "Look, Dad," she exclaimed. "I drew all of us, me, Nora, and you, and I gave us all superhero capes." Gareth knelt down beside her, his gaze softening. "Superhero capes, huh? I think we could all use those." Ellie giggled, and Gareth felt something shift inside him. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about appearances, board meetings, or societal expectations. He was just present. He was seeing his daughter happy, and he felt the weight in his chest ease. But happiness, he reminded himself, never existed in isolation, and soon the challenges of merging the personal and professional worlds would return. By midday, the household staff was beginning to murmur about Nora's new role. Some were supportive, admiring the way she managed Ellie's care with patience and intuition. Others, however, were less discreet, sharing doubts in hushed conversations near the kitchen or laundry room. "Can you believe it?" one housekeeper whispered, glancing toward Nora. "She's been a maid all these years, and now she's running the child's schedule. What if something goes wrong?" "Careful what you say," another replied. "Sir Dalton may have given her the title, but that doesn't mean the board won't notice." Meanwhile, Nora moved through the house with quiet grace, aware of the tension but choosing to focus on Ellie. She spoke softly to the girl as they tidied up toys, her voice steady, comforting. Yet beneath the calm exterior, a storm brewed in her mind. She loved Ellie, yes, but she also feared failure. Could she truly meet Gareth's expectations while handling the scrutiny of every other adult in the house? That afternoon, Gareth entered the nursery to find Ellie perched atop a chair, sketching frantically, her tongue peeking out as she concentrated. Nora was kneeling beside her, offering gentle guidance. "Look, Dad, I drew us again," Ellie announced, pushing the paper forward. Gareth took it carefully, studying the intricate details. The picture showed all three of them standing together, a sense of protection and warmth radiating from their little family. "It's perfect," he said softly, feeling a lump form in his throat. "You're really talented, Ellie." "I learned from Nora," she said confidently, her eyes bright. "She makes everything fun." Gareth glanced at Nora, who smiled faintly, her expression betraying a hint of relief. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if validation alone could ease the weight she carried. "You've been doing an incredible job, Nora," Gareth said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "Ellie trusts you. I trust you." Nora nodded, though her eyes flicked downward, humility mingling with pride. "I'll do everything I can, sir. I just want Ellie to be happy and safe." "You're already doing more than enough," Gareth assured her. The day continued, and Gareth found himself increasingly drawn into Ellie's world. He played board games with her, read stories aloud, and even attempted a sketch or two, each time greeted with Ellie's delighted laughter. For the first time, the house felt like a home rather than a museum of accomplishments and appearances. Yet, in the back of his mind, Gareth couldn't ignore the board. The executives were patient for now, but they wouldn't tolerate uncertainty forever. And what if they questioned his decision again? What if they undermined him, or worse, questioned Nora's abilities in public? The thought made his stomach twist, but it was quickly replaced by the sight of Ellie running toward him, giggling, her joy, her trust, her unwavering love for Nora, and now for him, anchored him more than any fear of social or professional consequences ever could. That evening, as they sat around the fireplace, Ellie rested her head on Nora's lap, the two of them chatting quietly while Gareth watched from across the room. He could feel the warmth of the scene, the depth of connection, and the stark contrast to the sterile, formal dinners he had endured in the past. Nora's hands stroked Ellie's hair gently. "I'm proud of you today," she murmured. Ellie's eyes sparkled. "I'm proud of you too, Nora. You're the best nanny ever." Gareth's chest tightened as he realized the truth. Titles, degrees, and status meant nothing compared to this bond, this trust, this love. He had spent so long chasing perfection, and now here it was, messy, imperfect, but real. The next morning brought a knock on the door that made Gareth pause. It was one of the professional nannies who had interviewed earlier, standing stiffly in the hallway. "Sir Dalton," she said, her voice measured, "I wanted to speak with you about Nora's appointment. I'm concerned about the implications for Ellie's care." Gareth took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I understand your concern," he said calmly, "but Ellie has chosen Nora. She's been her caretaker long before anyone else stepped in, and I trust Nora to continue doing what's best for Ellie." The nanny hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I see," she said, though the tension in her voice remained. "I hope for Ellie's sake that your trust is well placed." Gareth closed the door gently, a sense of determination settling over him. Let them doubt. He knew the truth. He had seen the love, the presence, the consistency, and nothing else mattered. Quick question. How do you think Gareth's relationship with the board and staff will evolve? Will they accept Nora as Ellie's caretaker? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to follow the story as it unfolds. Ellie ran into the garden, dragging Gareth along as Nora followed behind, carrying paints and paper. "Dad, you have to help me paint today. You're going to make the best superhero ever." Gareth smiled, laughing despite himself. For the first time, he realized that being present was far more important than being perfect. Ellie's joy, Nora's devotion. It was enough to remind him why he had made the choice he did. And for the first time, Gareth felt that maybe, just maybe, he was finally becoming the father Ellie needed. The next few days passed with a mixture of calm and unease. Ellie thrived under Nora's care, her laughter filling the hallways and bringing warmth to every corner of the house. But Gareth could feel the undercurrent of tension from the staff and the occasional whisper from the professional circle outside his home. He tried to ignore it, but it gnawed at him in quiet moments, a constant reminder that his decision wasn't universally accepted. One morning, Ellie ran up to him holding a crumpled sheet of paper. "Dad, look at what I drew last night." Gareth took the paper, kneeling beside her. It was a detailed sketch of the three of them, Ellie, Nora, and himself, standing together, a sunburst behind them. In Ellie's crude, charming handwriting, she had written, "Family is who shows up when it matters." Gareth felt his chest tighten. He looked at her, then at Nora, who stood nearby, quietly watching the interaction with a small, proud smile. "You're right, Ellie," he said softly. "Family is exactly that." Ellie beamed. "So, does that mean you and Nora are a team now?" He laughed softly. "Yeah, I think we are." Nora's cheeks flushed slightly, but her smile didn't waver. "We are," she said gently. "And I promise, Ellie, I'll always be here for you." Later that day, Gareth received a call from one of the board members. The conversation was polite but firm. They wanted assurance that his decision to appoint Nora would not compromise the company's public image. Gareth listened quietly, the familiar weight of corporate expectations pressing down on him. "I understand your concerns," he said carefully, "but this is about my family, Ellie's happiness and well-being come first. Nora is the person who has been there for her consistently. That's what matters. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sir Dalton, are you certain? Yes, Gareth said firmly. I'm certain. He hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, feeling the tension ebb slightly. Standing up, he walked to the garden, where he found Ellie and Nora sitting under the large oak tree. Ellie was painting with watercolors, her small hands smeared with bright colors, while Nora guided her carefully, correcting her strokes gently but never intruding. Gareth took a seat beside them. You two make a great team, he said softly. Ellie looked up, eyes shining. We do, Dad. Don't you think so? I do, Gareth replied, smiling. He glanced at Nora, noting the quiet confidence in her stance. She was calm, capable, and wholly devoted to Ellie. The thought struck him with surprising clarity. Nora had always been more than just a caretaker. She had been a steady, unwavering presence in Ellie's life, and that presence was more valuable than any credentials or professional experience. Nora nodded quietly. We're doing our best, she said. That's all anyone could ask for, Gareth said. As the days passed, the small victories in the house became more apparent. Ellie laughed more freely, her confidence growing with each passing day. Gareth began to notice the subtle ways Nora guided her, not through strict rules or schedules, but through patient instruction and gentle encouragement. Every little success Ellie achieved seemed to strengthen the bond between them, and even Gareth found himself learning from the way they interacted. One afternoon, while they were all in the drawing room, Ellie spoke suddenly. Dad, Nora says we have to practice sharing and teamwork today. Gareth laughed, taking a seat on the floor next to Ellie. All right, teach me, Ellie. Show me how to be part of the team. Ellie grabbed his hand and pulled him into the activity, showing him how to carefully mix colors and blend them on the paper. Nora watched, offering small tips but mostly letting them work together, letting Ellie feel the independence she craved. It was a simple moment, but for Gareth it was profound. He realized that parenting wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about control. It was about showing up, being present, and letting Ellie know that she was loved and supported. But the peace of the household was fragile. Later that week, a group of the professional staff convened quietly in the kitchen, whispering among themselves. Gareth could hear snippets as he passed by. She's not qualified, one said. Is it really appropriate for a housekeeper to take on a nanny's role? Another asked. Gareth felt a surge of frustration, but he reminded himself of the progress Ellie had made and the bond she shared with Nora. He could not and would not let whispers undermine what truly mattered. That evening, he found himself alone in the study again, reflecting on the events of the past month. He had stood up to the board, chosen his daughter's happiness over appearances, and supported Nora in her new role. Yet the doubts lingered. Could he maintain this balance? Could he protect Ellie while managing the scrutiny from staff and society alike? As he pondered these questions, a knock came at the door. It was Nora, holding a tray with 2 cups of tea. I thought you might like this, she said quietly, placing the cups on his desk. Gareth looked up, surprised by her thoughtfulness. Thank you, Nora. I appreciate it. She smiled faintly. It's nothing, sir. I want to make sure you're okay, too. You've been carrying a lot. Gareth exhaled deeply, realizing how much he had relied on her steady presence, even if he hadn't fully acknowledged it. I'm not always good at asking for help, he admitted. You don't have to be, Nora said gently, but sometimes letting someone in makes all the difference. Her words struck him. It wasn't just about Ellie. It was about the family they were slowly becoming, a family built not on status or expectation, but on trust, love, and loyalty. Quick question. How do you think Gareth will handle the mounting tension with staff and outsiders? Will he continue to trust Nora fully, Let us know in the comments, and remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated on Ellie's journey. The following morning, Ellie burst into the study waving another drawing excitedly. "Dad, look, I made a superhero team, and guess what? You're in it too." Gareth took the paper, examining the colorful figures. There they were, Ellie, Nora, and himself, side by side, all wearing exaggerated superhero capes. He felt his heart swell. "You're really improving, kiddo," he said softly. "This is fantastic." "I learned from Nora," Ellie said proudly, looking at her. "Yes," Nora said, smiling, "but you're the one who put it all together. I just helped a little." Gareth watched them both, realizing how much he had underestimated the impact of presence, care, and patience. Titles didn't matter. Credentials didn't matter. What mattered was showing up day after day and loving without reservation. The next chapter in their journey was only beginning, but Gareth felt a renewed sense of determination. The whispers, the doubts, and the scrutiny would come, no doubt, but the bond between Ellie and Nora, and the slowly strengthening trust between him and Nora, was stronger than any challenge. He knew that this was just the beginning of real change, both for his family and for himself. The next morning, the quiet peace of the house was broken by whispers echoing down the hallways. Gareth could feel it in the air before he even reached the kitchen, a subtle tension like static electricity and a dozen unspoken judgments pressing down on him. Ellie was sitting at the table, munching on toast, her sketchbook open in front of her. She glanced up at him and smiled brightly, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. "Dad, I finished my superhero drawing. You and Nora are saving the world together." Gareth forced a smile. "That sounds amazing, Ellie. I can't wait to see it." But before they could get too cozy in their morning routine, Miriam, one of the senior staff, stepped forward. Her expression was sharp, her tone clipped. "Sir Dalton, may I speak with you privately?" she asked, glancing briefly at Nora as if to gauge her reaction. Gareth set down his coffee, feeling the weight in his chest deepen. "Of course, Miriam," he said, rising. "Ellie, stay here, play with your drawings." Ellie nodded obediently, but Gareth could see the small furrow in her brow. She sensed something was wrong. Miriam led him to the study, closing the door behind them. "Sir," she began, her tone carefully controlled, "we need to talk about Nora's position. I understand your intentions, but the staff is uneasy. Many feel this decision undermines the hierarchy of the household. There are risks." Gareth sighed. "I understand your concerns, Miriam, but I made this choice for Ellie. Nora has been there for her longer than anyone else. She knows Ellie, she understands her, and that's what matters." Miriam's lips pressed together. "With respect, sir, the board is also watching. They have questions about public perception, and frankly, some of the staff may start to push back or resist following Nora's guidance. This could affect not just household management, but your reputation." Gareth's hands clenched into fists. "I'm aware of the scrutiny, but my family comes first. I won't apologize for prioritizing what Ellie needs over appearances." Miriam exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "It's not that simple. You've disrupted expectations, and while your daughter's happiness is important, we all have a duty to maintain order here." Gareth felt a pang of frustration and fatigue. "I'm done worrying about what others expect from me. I've made my decision, Miriam. Nora will remain in this role, and if anyone has an issue with it, they can address it with me directly, not through whispers and insinuations." Miriam hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Very well, sir." She left the room, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Gareth exhaled, a mix of relief and lingering tension settling in his chest. Returning to the kitchen, he found Ellie and Nora still engrossed in the sketchbook. Ellie looked up at him, her smile radiant. "Dad, look, We made a whole superhero team. Gareth knelt down beside her. That's fantastic, Ellie. Who's the most powerful superhero? Ellie pointed at Nora. Nora, of course. She saves the world every day. Nora chuckled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from Ellie's face. That's sweet of you, Ellie, but superheroes work as a team. Everyone has their part to play. Gareth felt a warmth spread through him. It was a small moment, but one that reminded him why he had made his choice. This bond, this trust, was irreplaceable. By midweek, the tension among the staff reached a tipping point. Small complaints began surfacing, minor disagreements over schedules, subtle criticisms of how Nora handled certain tasks. Gareth noticed the shift immediately, the subtle undermining that threatened to destabilize the household. One afternoon, while Ellie was napping, Nora approached Gareth quietly in his study. "Sir, some of the staff are becoming openly critical," she said, her voice low but firm. "I've tried to manage it, but it's getting harder. I don't want this to affect Ellie." Gareth rubbed his forehead, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "I know, Nora. I'll address it. You've been doing more than anyone could ask. Don't let their doubts shake you." She hesitated. I want Ellie to have the stability she deserves. I don't want to be the source of tension." Gareth stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not the source of tension. You're the solution. Ellie needs you, and so do I. Together, we'll handle the rest." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the storm seemed to subside. But Gareth knew it wouldn't be long before the challenges returned. Later that evening, a formal meeting was called with the staff to address the growing tension. Gareth stood at the head of the table, his voice steady, though his hands were slightly trembling. "I know this change has been difficult," he began, looking around the room. "Nora's role as Ellie's nanny is not negotiable. I've made this decision because it is in Ellie's best interest. Nora has been there for her consistently. That consistency matters more than titles or hierarchy." A few staff members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their skepticism clear. Miriam spoke up, her tone cautious but firm. "Sir Dalton, while we respect your decision, there are concerns about following her directives, especially with some of the more established staff." Gareth held her gaze. "Then those who cannot support Ellie's care appropriately will be reassigned. This household exists for Ellie. Her well-being comes first. I will not compromise that for anyone's comfort." The room fell silent. The weight of his words hung in the air. Slowly, the murmurs ceased. Some of the staff exchanged glances, realizing that Gareth's decision was final. Others looked resigned, though still wary. Back in the nursery, Ellie and Nora were waiting for him. Ellie's face lit up when he entered. "Dad, did you tell everyone?" "Yes," Gareth said, smiling softly. "I did. They'll follow the rules one way or another." Ellie grabbed his hand and held it tightly. "Good, because Nora is the best, and I'm not giving her up." Nora chuckled, brushing Ellie's hair gently. "I'm not going anywhere, Ellie. Don't worry." Gareth watched them, feeling the tension of the day dissolve. For all the external pressures, for all of the whispers and doubts, Ellie's joy and Nora's steady presence reminded him of what truly mattered. He had made the right choice. Quick question. How do you think the staff will respond in the coming weeks? Will the household find harmony, or will tensions rise further? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to follow Ellie, Nora, and Gareth's journey. Ellie hugged Nora tightly, laughing, her small arms wrapped around her. "I'm glad you're my superhero, Nora." Nora smiled, hugging her back. "And I'm glad you're mine, Ellie." Gareth watched them from the doorway, his heart swelling. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was messy, complicated, and beautiful all at once. and for the first time, Gareth felt truly at home. The next morning, the house was unusually tense. Gareth had woken early, restless, pacing the hallways as the first light of dawn filtered through the tall windows. Something in the air felt different. He could sense it, though he couldn't yet pinpoint what. By breakfast, the source became apparent. A group of staff had gathered near the kitchen, whispering in low tones. Their expressions were tight, skeptical, and some even resentful. Gareth felt his stomach knot. He had hoped that after the last meeting things would settle, but clearly he had underestimated the undercurrent of doubt. Ellie, oblivious as ever, was giggling over a new drawing she had created, a colorful superhero scene with herself, Gareth, and Nora. "Look, Dad, we're saving the galaxy together." Gareth forced a smile, though his eyes swept over the room, noting the wary stares of the staff. He had hoped to avoid confrontation this morning, but it seemed unavoidable. "Nora, can you join me in the study for a moment?" he said quietly. Ellie pouted but nodded. "Okay, Dad." She ran off toward the garden, calling back, "I'll show you the next page later." Gareth turned to Nora, who followed him with a quiet, steady pace. Once inside the study, he closed the door behind them. "Nora," he began, exhaling slowly, "some of the staff are getting restless. They're questioning your authority and Ellie's care. I need you to be prepared. This might escalate." Nora nodded, her expression composed but serious. "I know, I've noticed some subtle pushback already. I'll handle it, but I might need you to back me up if things get difficult." Gareth placed a hand on her shoulder. "I always will. We're a team, remember?" By midday, the tension had reached a boiling point. Miriam and a few others approached Gareth in the living room, while Nora was supervising Ellie in the garden. "Sir Dalton," Miriam began, her voice tight with frustration, "we need to discuss Nora's handling of Ellie's schedule. Some staff feel that she is overstepping boundaries." Gareth's jaw clenched. "She is doing what's best for Ellie. If anyone has a problem with that, they will address it to me directly, not through gossip or undermining her authority." One of the other staff, a senior housekeeper named Lillian, stepped forward, her tone sharp. "Sir, with all due respect, this is more than about Ellie. It's about the precedent you're setting. We have rules and hierarchy here, and now they're being disregarded." Gareth's patience snapped. "Enough. This household exists for Ellie. Her well-being comes before hierarchy, rules, and appearances. Nora is Ellie's caregiver, and I trust her. That's final." The room fell silent. Miriam and Lillian exchanged a glance, clearly frustrated but unwilling to challenge him further. Later, as the tension lingered, Gareth found himself pacing the hallways again. Nora approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You've done the right thing, Gareth," she said softly. "Ellie is happy, and she trusts me. That's all that matters." "I know," Gareth said, running a hand through his hair. "But the staff, the board, it's like the weight never goes away. Every decision I make feels like it could explode in my face." Nora gave a small, reassuring smile. "Then don't carry it alone. Let me handle what I can. You focus on Ellie. That's what she needs most." Gareth nodded, the tension in his chest easing slightly. He had forgotten how comforting it was to share the burden with someone he trusted implicitly. That evening, Ellie ran into the living room, her face flushed with excitement. "Dad, Nora and I made a superhero fortress. You have to see it." Gareth smiled, following her to the backyard, where the makeshift structure of pillows, blankets, and cardboard towers stood. Nora was crouched beside Ellie, her hands steady as she helped adjust a leaning tower. "It's incredible," Gareth said, genuinely impressed. "You two are really good at teamwork." Ellie beamed. "We're unstoppable. Right, Nora?" Nora chuckled softly. "Absolutely. Gareth watched them, feeling a surge of pride. For all the tension in the house, for all the scrutiny and whispers, the bond between his daughter and Nora, was unshakable. But the moment of peace was short-lived. Just as Gareth was about to step forward, Miriam appeared at the edge of the yard, her expression tight. "Sir Dalton," she called, her tone sharp. "We need to speak, now." Gareth's chest tightened. "Not here," he said firmly. "Inside." They moved to the study, closing the door behind them. Miriam's arms were crossed, her posture rigid. "Sir," she began, "I need to understand why you're allowing Nora to act as Ellie's primary caregiver. This is unprecedented, and frankly, it's creating friction among the staff. They're questioning the chain of command." Gareth inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself. "I made this decision because Ellie needs someone who has been there for her consistently. Nora has shown time and time again that she's trustworthy, patient, and loving. That matters more than titles or formal qualifications." Miriam's lips pressed together. "But this goes against protocol. It sets a dangerous precedent. If something were to happen—" "I will take full responsibility," Gareth interrupted, his voice firm. "Nothing is more important to me than Ellie's well-being. Nora will continue as her caregiver. I've made my choice, and it is not up for debate." There was a long silence. Miriam finally nodded, though her expression remained skeptical. "Very well, sir. I hope you understand the consequences of your decision." Gareth's gaze hardened. "I do, and I am confident in Nora and Ellie. That is enough for me." Later that night, Gareth found Ellie asleep, curled around her stuffed animals. Nora was quietly tucking the blankets around her, ensuring she was comfortable. Gareth watched from the doorway, feeling the weight of the day lift slightly. He realized that no amount of gossip, skepticism, or societal expectation could undermine the love and trust they had built. Ellie's joy, Nora's dedication, and his own commitment to prioritizing family over appearance were stronger than any external pressure. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Nora's shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered. Nora looked up, her eyes soft. "For what?" "For being here, for everything," Gareth said. Nora smiled faintly. "I wouldn't be anywhere else." "Quick question. How far do you think Gareth should go to protect Nora and Ellie from the outside pressure? Can their bond withstand more scrutiny? Comment your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to follow the final batch of this story. The bond between Ellie, Nora, and Gareth had been tested, but it was growing stronger. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time, Gareth felt a profound sense of clarity. Some things, love, loyalty, presence, were more important than perfection or societal expectations. The next morning, sunlight poured into the garden as Ellie bounced toward Gareth and Nora, sketchbook in hand. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her laughter rang out like music through the quiet estate. "Dad, look, I drew us all as superheroes again, and this time we're saving the world together." Gareth smiled, feeling his chest swell. He took the sketchbook, examining the bright colors and exaggerated capes. There they were, Ellie, himself, and Nora standing side by side, stronger together than any challenge the world could throw at them. "You've really outdone yourself," he said softly. "We make quite the team." Ellie grinned. "We do. And Nora says we can do anything if we stick together." Nora nodded, kneeling beside them. "She's right. Teamwork isn't just about following rules. It's about trust, love, and showing up for each other. That's what makes a team strong." Gareth watched them, the warmth in his chest spreading, grounding him. For all the whispers, doubts, and pressures of the outside world, this was what mattered. The bond they had built, unshakable and real. Later that day, Gareth called a meeting with the household staff. The tension from earlier weeks still lingered, but he was determined to close the chapter on unrest. "I know there's been concern about Nora's role as Ellie's nanny," Gareth began, his voice calm but firm. "I understand that this change has been difficult, but I want to be clear. Ellie's well-being comes first. Nora has been there for her, day in and day out. That's what matters, period." Miriam, Lillian, and the other senior staff exchanged glances, but Gareth continued. "Nora will be treated with the respect her role deserves, and anyone who truly cares about Ellie will support her and her nanny. That is non-negotiable." A tense silence followed. Slowly, Miriam nodded. "Understood, sir." Lillian followed suit, though her expression was cautious. The others murmured agreement, realizing that resistance was futile. Gareth exhaled, feeling a weight lift. The household hierarchy might have shifted, but Ellie's happiness and Nora's authority were secured. That evening, the three of them sat together in the garden, watching the sunset. Ellie leaned against Nora, her sketchbook forgotten for the moment. Gareth sat beside them, his arm around Nora's shoulder in quiet solidarity. "You know," Gareth said softly, "I used to think success meant doing everything right, meeting every expectation and following all the rules, but I've learned something important." Ellie looked up, curious. "What's that, Dad?" "That love and presence matter more than perfection," he said. "It's about showing up even when no one's watching. It's about loyalty, care, and making choices that protect the people who depend on you." Nora smiled, her hand resting on Ellie's. "Exactly. That's all Ellie has ever needed, and that's what makes this family strong." Ellie's eyes sparkled. "We're the best team ever." Gareth laughed softly, ruffling her hair. "Yes, we are." For the first time in months, the house felt complete, not just a mansion filled with staff and routines, but a home built on love, loyalty, and trust. The echoes of laughter, the warmth of care, and the presence of those who truly mattered created a foundation stronger than any title or certificate could provide. The next morning, Ellie ran to Gareth with her newest drawing. "Dad, look, we're superheroes again, but this time we're saving everyone in the house." Gareth chuckled, examining the picture. There they were, Ellie, Nora, and himself, each with a cape, standing proudly as a family. He felt a deep sense of pride and relief. They had weathered doubts, whispers, and social expectations, and yet they had emerged stronger, closer, and more united. "You know," Gareth said softly, looking at Nora, "I've learned more from you than I ever imagined. You've shown me what family really means." Nora looked at him, eyes gentle but unwavering. "And you've shown me that trust and support can make all the difference. Together, we're stronger." Ellie threw her arms around both of them, a triumphant smile on her face. "I love you guys." Gareth hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of home fill his chest. "We love you too, Ellie." And for the first time, the house truly felt like a home. Weeks passed, and the household settled into a new rhythm. Nora thrived in her role, guiding Ellie with patience, creativity, and affection. Gareth observed quietly, occasionally stepping in to share a game, a story, or a laugh. The staff adapted to the changes, gradually accepting the family's new dynamics. Ellie blossomed, her confidence and happiness growing each day. She laughed freely, played creatively, and approached the world with the security of knowing she was loved unconditionally. And in quiet moments, Gareth would watch them, the two people who had shown him what truly mattered, and feel the deep sense of fulfillment that only comes from prioritizing love over appearances, presence over perfection. Months later, Gareth, Ellie, and Nora sat together in the garden again, reviewing a series of Ellie's superhero drawings. Each one depicted their little family and adventures, saving imaginary worlds, and standing side by side through every challenge. Gareth smiled, feeling a profound sense of contentment. He had learned that true family isn't defined by titles, wealth, or social expectation. It's defined by loyalty, presence, and love. The people who show up when it matters most, who care without hesitation, and who remain steadfast through life's challenges. Ellie looked up at him, eyes wide with wonder. "Dad, do you think we really can save the world?" Gareth laughed softly, pulling her into a hug. "We already are, Ellie. We already are." Nora joined in the hug, completing the trio, and Gareth felt the warmth of their bond solidify. Outside whispers, doubts, and societal pressures seemed distant now, irrelevant compared to the truth in front of him, a family built on love, care, and unwavering presence. And in that moment he understood completely. Success was not measured by wealth, status, or accomplishments. It was measured by the people who stay, the love that persists, and the family that shows up every day in every small and unseen way. What do you think of Gareth, Nora, and Ellie's journey? Share your thoughts and favorite moments in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to follow more heartfelt stories like this one. The story concludes with their family stronger than ever, the household transformed, and the lessons of loyalty, care, and love fully realized.